Okay, thank you, Kyron. Let's talk about the Fall 1 reports. So Kyron talked about the real-time reports. We just want to emphasize that they're the same reports as the previously named ODS reports. As of right now, nothing has been added, and so you may not have a complete list of reports that mirror the snapshot certification. So the real-time reports may not be a complete one-to-one match to what's available as certification reports. However, there are several reports for Fall 1 that are legacy that are available as real-time reports. And so here are the Fall 1 reports. This slide can be used to help you understand the linkage of reports. So the report at the top, 1.1, is a count of primary enrollment and short-term enrollment. If you want to drill down and see more than just the count, see the students included in the count, you would go to report 1.2. That report can be drilled down from the report itself, or you can go directly to 1.2 and see the relationship of individual student to the counts in 1.1. Likewise, on the other side of the line down the center of the screen, towards the bottom right, you see report 16.12 and 16.13. These are students with disabilities report, and they provide counts of federal setting and primary disability. But both of these reports drill down to 16.4, students with disability plan student list. So the supporting reports are just as important as the certification reports because they allow you to see the actual data. They allow you to reconcile the counts and understand with better clarity how the counts were derived. So here's a view of additional supporting reports. And one thing I want to point out is the color coordination helps you identify the aggregate counts. These are the reports that CalPADS requires you to open up and certify, right? This is the product. When you resolve all the errors, you submit all the data. This is the information that's going to go to state, federal reporting. This is the information that accountability is going to use. However, locally, the supporting report, it provides actionable information. So report 1.1, primary enrollment and short-term enrollment count by subgroup, is a key report because it's the only report that provides column 9, SED. This is a federal category. You won't find the SED subgroup in many other reports, and it's a bit unique from the other disadvantaged subgroup collections that we take, like LCFF or the CTE disadvantaged subgroup in end of year. And so you can see the subgroups that we covered earlier in this training. You have your English learners, your Title III eligible immigrants, your gifted and talented education, your migrant students, students with disabilities, the SED column, and then the FR eligible students. And so if you have this report and you see these counts and you're wondering how is a student or what makes a student included in one of these subgroups, you go to the CalPADS user manual. And this is actually a screenshot of the report in the CalPAD user manual. That's why you can see report logic and the numbers. And so we'll demonstrate how to use this. All right. And we'll go from the beginning. So here you see report 1.1. How I get there is I go to functionality map, reports. You have certification and real-time reports, Fall 1 report mapping guides, report 1.1. So that's how you get, and you make variations depending on the report you want to get to. There's always a report description at the top of the mapping guide. There's an as of. So if it's a real-time version, you define the as of date or the as of period. If it's a certification report, it's reflective of Fall 1 Census Day. It tells us the students who are included. So you can see this report includes primary and short-term students. There are no non-ADA enrollments, so no 50. There are no secondary enrollments, so no 20s, only primary and short-term enrollments. And important, you can see the grade levels are TK through 12. So your infants and toddlers are not going to be included on this report. The real-time reports will allow you to add filters for those infant, toddlers, and preschool students, but by default, they're not included. So that's understanding who's going to be included in the report is very important when you're looking and trying to reconcile counts. This is just a description of filters. The age eligibility filter description specifically, who is included as far as TK and kindergarten. And then here's the report logic. You're mapping data in CalPads to each column. And so if we go to SED, column 9, I have column 9. And there's several different criteria that will include the student into SED. And so if we look at the top, field 2.50, that's so one says SINF, that comes from the student information file, or if I'm looking at a student record in CalPATS, that's their demographics. If I'm looking at a file type, or if I'm looking for information at the file like CFS, I would go to 2.50. And this is the parent guardian information. And there's a breakdown of students with two parents or guardians will be included in SED if both parents are not high school graduates or students are not included in the SED subgroup, if a single parent or if more of the parents decline the state. So this is a contentious definition. That's why we use it as an example. So for 24-25, this was the definition. If there's a modification to this definition or this calculation in 25-26 or any other year, the mapping guide is updated with your latest information. Also, if this description does not provide clear enough information for you, you can go to the link here, which is usually part of the user manual glossary, and then a more detailed definition of that information is provided. So you can see business rules. Here is the current calculation and different combinations of scenarios, which will include a student solely based on their parent ed level as a socioeconomically disadvantaged student. And so this is the type of information that you can find in the report mapping guides. And this is one of the reasons why the CalPAD user manual is so valuable, right? The reports are everything. The reports are the counts that provide funding. The reports are the counts that identify students as disproportionate. The reports provide inclusions or funding as far as LCFF. They comprise students that get included in the UPPC. So very important information, very important to understand the counts, make sense of the counts, and verify that the counts represented in CalPADS reflect our student information system and that the data in our student information systems accurately reflect our student population's realities. So that's report 1.1. Report 1.2. This is the same report as 1.1, except for it's a student list. And so now you can see that the school, each individual student enrolled at that school, their name, their gender, their race is included in this report. And then here are the categories that are featured in 1.1. The same student categories, except for this report names the student. So if there's a count that's off or a count that's a little bit inflated, you can identify students and determine whether or not the data was correctly reported for those students. So here we have report 1.5. Again, this reflects the information that's on 1.1. It's a breakdown of your primary enrollments by race and ethnicity. And so you can see it has it has Hispanic first. That's the only ethnicity collected in CalPADS. You're Hispanic or you're not. And then you have the individual race codes. Multiple means more than one race was reported. And missing means the race and ethnicity were both reported as missing, or the missing indicator was selected. That's what they're called, Hispanic missing indicator. It would be yes, and the race ethnicity missing indicator would be yes. If a student is Hispanic and no race is reported, they'll be counted in Hispanic. If a student has a race reported and not Hispanic, the race is reported. And this is a supporting report. And so we were talking about the value of these supporting reports. I just want to show you. So here we have CalPADS test. So this data is not accurate at all by any means. And this is a view of the report that has been ran. You can see it's 1.3. It's similar to 1.5. It's a supporting report. And so you have your different race and ethnicity at the top and the percentage of your student population. And then this is the same report, but we filtered for only students with disability, right? And so if you do a comparison, our student population is 60%, 61% Hispanic if you round up or down. And about 69% of our Hispanic students, or 69% of our students with disability population is Hispanic. So that's not significant. It's a little bit overrepresented slightly. It may not even show up at all because it's a measure. But you know, these are small populations, so they're going to be a little bit dramatized, but this is just test. We're not going to try to test or simulate the entire population of California. But when you're looking at percentages, we'll go back and you'll see Saraceno's high. You see Saraceno's high right here. 50% of the Hispanic population is a student with disability, right? When you do that comparison to the general population of students, 25% of the student population are Hispanic. So total number of students, how many of those students are Hispanic? At Saraceno's, there's 4 students, 1. If we multiply this by 1,000, you'd have 25% to be 4,000, and 1,000 students would be Hispanic. And so you could see how if this was multiplied, increased, there would be an overrepresentation. It's not significant with this low number. It's just an example, but if they were multiplied by 100 or 1,000, it's double, right? More than double the number of students that should be identified proportionate to the enrollment are identified. So that would be disproportionate. So that's an example. So that's report 1.5. And here we have report 1.17, LCFF unduplicated pupil count. And so this report is a key report. It's very important because, as the title suggests, this helps identify students for LCFF, those that would be part of the UP, right? And so you have a view of those students that are either free and reduced price meal, as identified by 181 and 182, foster youth, state match, tribal foster youth, program 193, homeless students identified by program 191, migrant students who will be a match at the time of this recording. It's still identified as 135, but this will be a state match as well. Your direct certification, which is also a state match. All of these students are your FRPM eligible students. The thing is, with this report, a student may be foster youth and homeless. A student might be migrant and homeless. A student might be migrant, homeless, and direct certification. So there's these columns will not add up and equal 10. The student will only be represented once. That's the term unduplicated. If there are any of these, if they're a member of 4 through 9, they will show up in 10. If they are a member in many or multiple categories 4 through 9, they'll show up only once in 10. Then you have your EL students. Those students in 10 and 11 will be counted in 12, but 12 is unduplicated. So if you have a student who's an English learner and has also been directly certified, or a student who's an English learner and a migrant student, they're only counted once. So again, 12 is not an addition of 10 and 11, but if a student shows up in either 10 or 11, they will be counted in 12. So 12 ultimately is the total number of students you have identified as eligible for LCFF. And if you want to reconcile these counts, you're not going to do determination or investigation of these buckets. What you're going to do is look at report 1.18. And so here you have the supporting report 1.18. You have the student's name, their school of enrollment, gender, grade level, ethnicity, and then you have your different buckets, right? And so a student may be yes, homeless, and also have a 181 free reduced record. They'll only be counted once, but this will show you why they are eligible for LCFF, and any student not included has not been identified. So it's important to review the counts, but also the students, and in the report, you can filter by school. This report might take a day or two to go through just to make sure that every student is counted. One thing that you're going to want to do with these reports is identify students that are directly certified, identify students that might be identified in the NSLP program, and in your local systems, query for students with the same address. Students of the same household that are not categorically eligible, those that are direct cert or 181 free, those are household determinations. Direct cert doesn't always get siblings or members of the same household. You might have step siblings, different last names. However, it's the same economic unit and they're going to be members of that same household. And so you want to be able to use this information you're getting from CalPad and make sure you're getting as many students counted. Not only do they receive free lunch, but they're going, most importantly, they're going to increase your funding for LCFF. So, these reports can be used to also inform your local decisions and practices, right? They can help influence you. It's not just you're submitting data to CalPad. You're supposed to be able to visualize the data you have in CalPads, compare it to your local student information systems, and make decisions as far as business practices going forward. All right, so we have report 1.24 dropouts by subgroup. Remember, at end of year, we report 1-year grads as well as the 4-year cohort. And that period ends August 15th every year. And so it's not until August 15th that we know who may be a dropout. And so that data is collected in fall one because it's not only did you leave school and how did you leave school, did you have a subsequent enrollment? That would determine if you're a dropout. So we use Census Day, students that leave school and have not completed and are not are not enrolled by census day are usually determined to be dropouts. So here we have the total count of dropouts, different subgroups of those students: socially, economically disadvantaged, English learners, students with disabilities, Title I Part C migrant. And so you have a count, but the significance is the supporting reports helps you identify who was reported as a dropout, and you can use your due diligence to, research and see if the students have enrolled, what they're doing, or if CalPAS just needs to be updated. You have the information. Report 2.1, Title III eligible immigrants. This is a count of all those students who have been identified as eligible immigrants. This is based on the student information. It is not a program. So we're looking at the student's birth country. If they were not born in the United States or Puerto Rico, they're going to be potentially an eligible immigrant. If they've been enrolled less than 3 cumulative years, and that is indicated by you, they're going to be an eligible immigrant. It's not a calculation in CalPADS. It's an indication. So those students that are eligible because they've been enrolled less than 3 cumulative years should have a Y. Those students that are not eligible should have the indication removed. So that's something that you have to update for these students. So this is a report that you're going to look at the counts, and you're going to confirm the counts by looking up the students' names and, verifying that they are enrolled less than 3 cumulative years. CalPADS does not look at their enrollment start date and calculate this. It's just an indication you're saying these students are eligible immigrants. So that's something to look at. And then, of course, their ages 3 through 21. So a lot of the Title III programs are ages 3 through 21. So if you have a Head Start program at your school, you might have eligible immigrants at your Head Start program. They're not yet in TK, they're not yet in kindergarten, but they're eligible, and it should be reported. You can get an SSID. It's not just for students with disabilities. You can report these preschool students in the Head Start programs if they're homeless, eligible immigrants. So the reports help you identify these students or if they're missing. And you may not have a enrollment for the preschool students. Here you see special education preschool. But if you do have a Head Start program, you can enroll these students at the district, their grade level preschool, identify if they qualify for a Title I program such as homeless, migrant, or if they're a Title III eligible immigrant, and you'll see those students reflected. And down here, it's a good example because down here at the bottom of each report shows you the students included, and you can see for this report, preschool is included. This is an older screenshot, but still that fact remains. Preschool would be included if you report them. Then we have English language acquisition status count by primary language. All the students' primary languages are included. Of course, the number of ELs is significant because they are eligible for LCFF funding, but you also want to be able to identify your English learners as soon as possible so you can provide them the most appropriate services. This is report 2.9, English language acquisition status census day comparison. We're just comparing the English language acquisition statuses from last year to this year. So you can identify if there's a significant change in your student population that's not reflective of the enrollment. So if the enrollment is pretty consistent year to year, you would probably expect the statuses to be kind of similar from year to year. Certainly, if there's big growth, you might see a big change in status, or if there's a big decline, you might see a significant change. And then supporting reports, 8.1 through C, student profile list. So 8.1, as you can see, has been cut in half. It's the most extensive CalPAS report. So If you want to provide information to some people who do not have access to CalPads, perhaps it's a teacher, this is a good report to provide them and they can make corrections, whether it's a paper report or electronic report. They can look at this student profile and update you, right? They may have a student who is homeless and they can make an annotation on a report and provide it and return it to you. This would be a good use of verifying student information with teachers without requiring them to update it. Or if they are updating the student information system, at the district level, at the LEA level, the data stewards at each school can verify that their information is correct. Certainly one person wouldn't be expected to do the whole LEA, but program staff, teachers could be expected if they're the local data stewards to identify the data they're responsible for. In particular, student enrolled 3 years indicator. These could potentially be your eligible immigrants. So if there's a Y, they can identify if that student's been enrolled less than 3 years. So perhaps your fourth graders and up, you want to verify that student's school start date, see if they've been enrolled more than 3 years, and see if that indicator needs to be a no rather than a Y. So it's a potential use for the report. How you manage your data should be determined by local policy and procedures. So our special education reports, the 16 series, we'll start with 16.12, students with disabilities education plan by primary disability. And so at the top, these are the different disability categories, which a student could be eligible for special education. Then column 3 would be the education plan type, whether that student is on all of these students are going to be on an active plan. For fall 1, we're only looking at students on active plans. So column 3 will always be populated and it will always be a IEP 100, a IFSP 150, or ISP 200, which are those students in private school. 100 and 200 are for school age students. 150 is for the infants, are pretty much for the infants. The 150s and the 200s would have enrollment status 50. So that's something as a SIS data coordinator you want to know how to properly enroll our students with disabilities. And then report 16.13 students with disability count by federal setting. Again, you have your primary disability category. So here you would see a count of the number of students in each disability category. On report 1613, you'd have the disability category listed here in column 3. Then you would see that count. So that count that should reflect 1612 would be in column 4. And then here's the setting, the number of students in a setting, right? Here are the different program settings, special education program settings, and then the percentage of time they're in general education participation. And these are ranges. The actual record has a specific numerical percentage, so it might be 49, 51, 52, and then we just throw them in the bucket in which they fall. Remember that students with disabilities, we would like them to be with their peers in general education as much as possible. And so the greater the time that they're separated from general education, so basically the lower number, the more restrictive the environment. Then some settings are more restrictive than others. So separate schools would be a setting that's more restrictive than a regular classroom, 400, right? The student is in a separate school. So unless they have a severe disability, you want to know why they're in a separate school or depending on their age, why they might be at home rather than with their peers. So this report has a lot of information as far as the least restrictive environment or the special education setting. And then report 16.14, students with disabilities plan list. This report, but we don't see the data here, is the supporting report, and it has information about the plan, the status. So you can see the status if they're eligible or not, the plan information, the least restrictive environment information. It goes into great detail. And these are other indicators about their transition services here. So you're looking at the special education plan record and the status information in great detail, along with race, ethnicity, the enrollment, and demographic information. And then we have report 16.15. This is not a report that you will certify for fall one, but student services are prescribed with their IEPs, ISPs, IFSPs, and you can use this for monitoring purposes to make sure students are receiving the services that are prescribed in their special education plan types. And then report 1616 is not a count of services, but the student list. It's the supporting report for 16.15. And here we have report 16.11, students with disability annual comparison report. It provides you a count of your students with disabilities. And when you drill it down or open it, you can see a count and do a comparison from one year to the other. So you could look at that population of students with disabilities and compare them year over year.